Welcome to Magic Loops Docs, teaching you how to get the most out of Magic Loops. In this video, we'll go over what fetching is by building a program that sends you a joke based on a topic that you text to a number. First, on the Magic Loops dashboard, let's go ahead and type in a prompt to generate an outline. So we want to send a text message with a joke topic, then fetch a joke based on that topic from the joke API. If no joke is found, run the fetch again to get a random joke from the API. Good. Hit enter. And it's going to go ahead and create an outline of all of the blocks that we need to accomplish this. Remember, blocks are just subtasks. So the first one is a text message trigger. So yes, this is what we want. We want our program to start running when we send a topic for a joke to a specific number. And then the next task is it's going to take whatever it is that we text, the topic that we text, for example, cat, and it's going to try to find a joke about cats by doing this fetch. A definition of what fetch is that it's a way for a program to grab data or information from another place on the web. So essentially, this joke API is a database of jokes. It just has a bunch of jokes, and there's information about those jokes, which we'll see what that information is in a little bit here. It's basically like a Google search engine, and it's going to get back some information for us, is what fetching is doing. It's basically a search. So we typed in the word cat, and it's going to this database to look specifically in here in this joke API to see if there are any jokes about cats. So if there's a joke about cats, hooray, we have our joke, and it's going to go ahead and send us that joke via text message. So we're going to get a joke about cats and we're going to laugh. But what happens if there are no jokes about cats within this joke API or within this database of jokes? If that happened, we wouldn't get anything back and we would be sad because we want to laugh right now. So oftentimes what you want to do when you're working with fetch or APIs is you want to have a fallback. So what's going to happen if you go searching for whatever it is you're looking for and it can't be found? So if it can't be found, what we're going to do is we're just going to say, hey, just find us some random joke because we really want to laugh right now. So it's going to go ahead and run the fetch again if there was no joke found, and then it's going to send it back to us there. So this looks good, but we're going to change it in a little bit, and we're going to see that there might be some errors as Magic Loops goes ahead and tries to create this program for us. Let's go ahead and fix the error here by scrolling to the top and dissect what's going on. Here, the hypothetical text that was sent from us to this number was a joke about cats. We don't want it to be a joke about cats. We only want to send a topic. So let's confirm our change. The reason why we only want to send the topic here is the way that fetch works. Let's go ahead and click the show details and look at the URL. So this is the URL that we are going to get or fetch our data, getting our joke in this instance. At the end here, we have a query parameter. You'll see we have this familiar money sign with some text in all capital letters. Here it says block input. I'm going to change this just to be sure that we're getting the right thing to the SMS trigger output, which remember in this case is storing cats, whatever we texted. So we're going to put that here in our query parameter. So what this means is, okay, so we're going to go to this API, which is essentially a database or somewhere that stores data. It doesn't work just like a database, but it's a very related concept. And then the way they set it up is, okay, this first part right after this / here is the category. And we don't care about the category. We just want to make sure that it contains whatever it is that we typed up here, and we typed cats. So it's just going to be a joke that contains something about cats. And that's, remember, our SMS trigger output is storing that variable there. So this is saying contains cats, essentially. So that's why we only wanted to say cats and not a joke about cats, because then here it's looking for a joke that has the text in it, a joke about cats, which there probably isn't one. Note that each API you use will have a unique way they structure the URL, but they do share some commonalities. They will all have this beginning part here, which is the domain. So it will end with .dev, .com, .ai, or any one of those ending extensions. And after that, they might have some paths that point you to more specific data. For example, if we were using a weather API, maybe they would have a path that looks like this. They would have something like weather slash current there. So that would point us in, okay, so we're at this weather API and we want to get the current weather. And perhaps within this same API, we could get weather slash weekly. And this would point us and give us information about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the weather. So let's go ahead and change it back to what it was. Apart from these paths, you may also have query parameters, which in our case is this question mark contains, which is a key, and then equals some value. And that value is what we provided. It's like what we want to search for. However, different APIs have different query parameters. So, for example, imagine we're continuing to work with a weather API where we had the weather slash weekly. Rather than contains, we have city. And this city could be whatever we want it to be. It could be Belgium or San Francisco. And there could be additional query parameters for this API as well to get even more specific data. So this is added on using an ampersand, and perhaps it's units. And we can specify if we want, for example, metric. So the way the URL is structured is unique to the API. So in the case of a weather API, you would have your domain, which would not be this jokeapi.dev. It might be openweather.dev/weather/weekly, which these are the paths, which are getting us to more specific data. And then the query parameters, it has the key and the value that we provide that we're looking for to get us to our ultimate endpoint, which this entire URL here is our API endpoint. You can get more information about the structure of the API URL by going to their documentation or using a generative AI tool like ChatGPT or Claude to ask how the URL for the API you want to use is structured. Now let's get our URL back to the way it was. Joke any question mark contains equals our SMS trigger output, which remember, it means cats in this situation. It's storing cats. Let's go ahead and run it again. All right. Now let's go back to where we were in the fetch block here. And let's click on this output. It will drop down. Here you will see a JSON object. JSON is essentially structured data or information, and it allows information to be easily sent between computers and servers. For JSON, it's written in a very specific format so that it can easily be understood by computers. You have this opening curly brace and also a closing curly brace at the bottom. This tells the computer that all of this information between these curly braces are associated, in our case, with one joke. And again, in our case, this joke is the one that we fetched or received from the joke API. Inside of this JSON object, remember between these starting and closing curly braces, we can see what category the joke belongs to, which is miscellaneous. We can also see things such as the flags, which is telling us more information about the joke, whether it's a religious joke, political, racist, etc. And we can see the joke itself. Why are cats so good at video games? They have 9 lives. So funny, right? Within this JSON object, you'll also notice that every piece has 2 parts. We have category, miscellaneous, type, 2-part. On the left side of the colon, this is called the key. So in this case, category is the key. And on the right side of the colon is the value, miscellaneous. If you go through this line by line, it's quite easy for a human to understand because JSON objects look just like text. When you're working with Fetch and various APIs, the data you get will be unique to the API. It's always a good idea to read through the key value pairs to see the type of information the API is giving you so that you can find what data will be useful in your application. In this case, what we're looking for is the joke itself, which is stored in the key of setup and the key of delivery. Now that we know about JSON objects, let's learn a bit more about what is often required when we use APIs. In the details of the fetch block, there is a section called headers. And as a placeholder, there is some text that says authorization, foo. Some APIs require you to have an API key. And that's what goes in this box right here. An API key is essentially a unique identifier. You can think of it like a username. Some APIs require this because it costs money to store data on servers, upkeep the database, etc. Therefore, some APIs require you to sign up and pay according to how much and how often you are fetching data from their API. The current one we're using, the Joke API, does not require an API key, so we can leave this blank. However, if you find that you do need an API key, you can go to the website and request to get one. Once you have it, you copy and paste it here, and you'll be able to use the API. We've learned a lot about the fetch block up to this point, so let's do a quick recap. The purpose of fetch is to get data from an API. To get the data, we need to provide an API endpoint, aka this URL right here. The URL has several parts. It has the domain name, which is where the API is hosted, and there are different paths which will direct us into more specific databases within this API. And also, there are query parameters, which are going to get us the very specific pieces of data that we are looking for. When you receive the data from the API, it's sent to you as a JSON object. A JSON object is structured data that can easily be understood by a computer. You have the opening and closing curly braces, you have key value pairs inside. And lastly, we also talked about the headers and the authorization that you might need if you are using this API. And remember, the authorization is just a unique identifier so that the creators of the API know that it is you who is requesting this data, because some of them are paid, whereas others are free. So let's move on down further to this exit. So this is exit the loop if a joke is found in the fetch block output. Use the code to check if the response contains a joke. I'm actually going to delete this, and we're going to do it a little bit differently. And I'm going to delete this next. I'm going to copy this and delete this next fetch here. And instead, I'm going to change it to a code block. Actually, with a code block, you can also run a fetch and retrieve some data from somewhere, but you can also write additional code with it, so it's a bit more powerful. So I'm going to do if no joke was found from the, I'm going to take this variable. So it's saying from this, essentially, if this error comes back as true, yes, there was an error, we couldn't get it, fetch a random joke from the joke API. Now let's test to make sure that this is working by changing the keyword we are texting to this number. Let's change it to blobfish, which is a topic or a keyword that they do not have in this API. Scroll up to the fetch block and see what the output was. So now we have an error of true. And if you go to this message here, it says there was no matching joke found. And we have more information caused by no jokes were found that match your provided filters. Let's scroll down and see if our code was able to give us a joke anyways. So yay, we got a joke because we have error is false And we got the joke, I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. Ha 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 ha. That's quite good. Now we're ensuring that no matter what keyword we send via text, we're always going to get a joke back, whether it's in the API or not, which is great. There are still few other things that we need to fix before our application is finalized. And one of those is with this send a text. So we don't just want the output to go into magic loops. We actually want to get the joke via a text message. So we need to change a few things here. Send the fetch joke back to the user via SMS, and we want the joke from this code block. We can go ahead and regenerate and see what happens. Good. And so sometimes this will not output so cleanly. Actually, your JSON object will be down here. And to make sure that that doesn't happen, we can go back up here to the code block and add in a safety net. And we can write something like, make sure to format the joke in a text message friendly manner. And we can go ahead and regenerate. And it will write an extra check for us and give us some output here. Good. So if you're not here for the yodeling lessons, please form an orderly queue. Ha 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 ha. Very funny once again. So now we have completed our application to send a keyword to an API. The API looks for a joke with that keyword and then sends it to us as a text message. If it doesn't exist, it gets a random joke and then sends it to us. Excellent. That's all for this video about how to create this application using the fetch block. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.